Why do old people love mothballs? Seriously, I don't get it. I'm sure you don't either. That's why you're here. I go to people's houses a lot. It's for work. It's a blast sometimes, not most of the time. But I notice one thing. Their houses all smell the same. They smell the same as my grandmother's. They smell the same as your grandmother's, probably. And you know what it is? It's these little tiny white pellets sprinkled all around every single one of their houses. Of course, I'm being a little bit dramatic. They're not at every single old person's house, but mothballs are everywhere. And I don't know why. I don't know what mothballs are. I just know that they're a thing that old people have near their house. So let's find out why old people love mothballs. The way we do that is we start by typing in, why do old people love mothballs? See, there we go. Okay. Reddit thread pops up. That's a great sign. Not reading the AI. Old people still use mothballs. Old people smell. See, it's a whole thing. Old people use mothballs. Why don't people use mothballs anymore? That's a thing apparently people are asking. I don't think any of these sources are going to give me good answers. Let's check Reddit though. The stupidest one, the best answer. All right, let's see. Grandparents, they smell like mothballs. Of course. They could afford real wool. So is it to keep out moths? That would give them a name that makes sense, I guess. Mothballs, they're meant to keep moths out. As far as I know, it's not mothballs, but a change of composition. Old people smell because they get old. But okay, that's not what I'm asking. So we're going to back out of this and we're going to try to figure out what, if I can type, oh my gosh, what are mothballs? Okay, here we go. What are mothballs? Wikipedia. That's always a good space to start, and then check because it's probably going to be wrong. Okay, mothballs are small balls of chemical pesticide and deodorant, so they smell and they get rid of bugs. Sometimes they're used when storing clothing or material to keep them from damaged mold moth. Okay, so they're meant to protect clothes because they're a pesticide and they're stinky. But I know that some pesticides are just stinky. There's a lot of things with peppermint oil, which is just a really stinky oil. There are things with like all sorts of oil, like sage oil is another one that's coming to mind. That's not important. Sometimes people use different oils to try and repel pests. That's something that, as somebody who has worked in pest control, makes a lot of sense. But what actually are mothballs? What makes them smell the way they do? I know why they're used, but composition. Older mothballs consist primarily of naphthalene, which is a compound of carbon and hydrogen. This means nothing to me, but due to its flammability, many modern mothball formulas instead use a different one. So they used to be flammable, and old people were putting them with their clothes. That's a great idea. Oh my gosh. Okay. Uh, Sometimes they're not even. Okay. Jesus, this is driving me nuts. Mothballs stink. Why do people want them? Stop working on something. It's a different word. Okay. Mothballs stink. We figured that out. They stink. They are supposed to keep moths and other things away from your clothes. Mothballs marketing is my next search because maybe, just maybe, people were using mothballs because of a mass marketing scheme. That's my first thought. Let's see. Mothballs market size reveals best. This isn't what I want. Mothballs advertising. Okay. I don't need to know any of this stuff from the modern. See, it's only old people that really use mothballs. I never see them at young people's houses. It's always the old people. So let's think. Boomers were what? They were after World War II, so it's like the 50s and 60s. I don't even know generations. The greatest generation. Let's look up mothballs advertising 1960s. That's a W. Okay. Moth killer nuggets. Okay, here's a good one. One spraying in this easy proven way makes the woolens moth proof at all times. Moths will never eat this suit. It's kind of crazy that moths were just eating people's clothes. Like, again, I used to work in pest control. I would see a lot of people who had pantry moths, where they were getting into grains or rice, particularly stuff from farmers markets. If you want to prevent that, all you have to do is put your stuff in sealed containers, shuts out all the air, and then they suffocate and die. But better just buy stuff from grocery stores. I know it might not be as good, but you're not going to get meal moths that way. Not important. So let me read some more of this. Okay, I didn't mean to pull up the whole thing. Oh, gross. Open image in new tab. That's what we want right there. And then we can zoom in. Okay. Amazing professional moth proofing method now sold. And I know these aren't even mothballs, but I just want to see kind of why they were pushing mothballs, because moths were getting into clothes. We figured that part out. Okay, to be absolutely sure, moths will not damage woolens. The modern housewife, oh, I love me a modern housewife, can now moth-proof the clothes itself. And it's so easy with Larvex. Just spray it on. The magic Larvex spray penetrates each tiny fiber and treats the cloth so that moths are positively stopped from eating holes in your woolens. I don't know why I'm reading this like I'm reading it like I would read it, but I'm picturing it being read in a mid-Atlantic accent, where they're talking like this and they're reading the sports. I can't even do it. It's a mid-Atlantic ad. That's my conclusion here. Okay, where was I? They're completely odorless and stainless. Okay, so if it's completely odorless, then this isn't mothballs. This might be an alternative to mothballs. A few minutes easy spraying with Larvex lasts for a whole year. That's a good claim you can make. At all times, you can be sure moths won't eat holes in your woolens. Whether you wear the garments occasionally or hang them away in your closet, either way, Larvex protection remains. Spray your rugs and sofas too. Jeez, this is ridiculous. Okay, so moths were eating people's clothes. Now, my natural question isn't anything about mothballs. I do want to get back to that, of course. That's what we're here to find out. Why did moths stop eating clothes? Whatever, I can't spell. We'll correct it. Once the larvae turn into adult moths, they never eat again. So it's just the moth larvae that are actually eating the clothes. So this is unlike your pantry moths, your grain moths, or anything like that. These are not sprouting and doing that stuff. Why don't moths eat clothes anymore? Here we go. Today we have moth traps, poison, and more effective cleaning methods that combine with more synthetic fibers. Means most houses don't have moth problems anymore. Okay, I know that. I know most houses don't have moth problems anymore. Are modern clothes resistant to moths? There we go. Okay, how to get rid of moths from the New York Times. This year on Wirecutter. Clothes moths, are they here to... This is still a problem? Have you ever had moths? Clearly old people have, because they have the mothballs. But I didn't realize this is still a problem. Protect your woolen garments. Is it just wool? Is it just wool? I need to get off Reddit. Do moths only eat wool? There we go. No, this is AI. I don't trust it. UK entomology from the University of Kentucky. Okay, clothes moths are pests that can destroy fabric and other materials. They feed exclusively on animal fibers, especially wool, fur, silk, feathers, felt, and leather. That's why I don't get moths. My clothes are all cotton and polyester. So they're going for, what does it say? Materials like that contain keratin. Okay, so they're getting the proteins. Moths want proteins, so they're going to eat clothes. Most people I know don't wear actual animal fibers anymore. They're wearing polyester. I don't know. What is this shirt? What is this shirt made of? 100% cotton. So I'm wearing cotton. Okay. Do moths eat cotton or just wool? Let's see. They'll also eat cotton if there's nothing better around. But there's no sustenance, so if they don't have that, okay. But they're not going to get the proteins. God, this sucks. Okay. Instead of grains, flour, pasta, and cereal, clothes moths feed on animal fibers that contain keratin. Come on, click. Do the... Does cotton have keratin? Is cotton made of keratin? Keratin can be naturally derived from... Okay, so no. Oh, wait, no, yes. Okay. Why aren't moths in my clothes? Oh, God. Okay. What is cotton made of? Cellulose. Okay. What things are made of keratin? Hails no. So this is not clothes. Okay. So I guess, oh, I don't know. This is why we're here. We have to figure it out. That's the whole point of this. Why do old people like mothballs? What's the original purpose of mothballs? To keep out moths. But why are moths trying to get in? See, it's a rabbit hole and we're working our way down before we work our way back up. Okay. So they're looking for keratin. And then they made a repellent to the moths that are looking for the keratin to protect clothes. We've got that figured out. Moths want wool or other animal-based fibers because they eat it for sustenance and then turn into actual moths, the little larvae, hence we saw the Larvex ad. Okay, we're going to figure this out. Why aren't moths a problem in clothes? Most moths in the home are actually feeding on plants. Anything longer than 1 centimeter is not likely eating your clothing. What? Only 2 moth species can damage your textiles: the case-making clothes moth and the webbing clothes moth. Most commonly infest clothing. Okay, let me look up these guys. Okay, so these are the little tiny guys. This is what I think of when I think of like grain moths. Okay, Wikipedia again. Here we go. The case-bearing clothes moth is a species of moth. Yeah, we know that. The fungus moth. What? Oh, it's in the family of the fungus moth. Okay. Cosmopolitan. I can't read. Okay. Being a widespread species and often affiliated with humans, this was among the first moths to be scientifically described in the modern sense. Okay, so these are the first ones that people noticed, probably because they were eating their clothes. They were already recognized as a distinct subgenus. Some researchers who studied the moth. Okay, I don't care about the actual history of them. I just want to know about them in clothes, and there's nothing on them. Okay, here we go. The larvae eat mainly fibrous keratin. We figured that out, such as hairs, feathers, and it can become a pest when it feeds on carpets, furs, upholstery, and woolen fabrics. It also consumes detritus, cobwebs, bird nests, particularly those of the domestic pigeon, stored vegetable produce, and wallpaper. Oh my god. Nobody has wallpaper anymore, so now the moths don't need to get in the walls. That's great. Okay. So, I still don't understand why moths aren't a problem anymore. This isn't the point of the video, but why are moths not a problem? Okay. Why are moths such a big deal? Reddit has the answers, I hope. Before air conditioning, the windows were often open so they could get in more easily, but I work in pest control now, and I know that like a lot of people still have their windows open and they don't get clothes moths. Moths can easily get in the house with clothing. With homes better sealed to conserve energy, insects can't get in as easily. They can still be a problem getting through doors as you come and go, but they probably are less often in but there are probably less of them in a city than a rural area where the moths have more to eat and more places to breed. Okay, hold on. I think it may be due to how clothing and items have shifted over time to from more natural fibers like wool to synthetic. So they're not eating the synthetic clothes. Is that it? Are the clothes that we're getting at Target or Walmart or Amazon or wherever you buy your clothes, are they moth resistant? Are modern textiles resistant to moths? Textile moth repellent. I already looked this up. Ugh, what fabrics are moth-proof? Synthetic fabrics such as polyester, okay, and rayon. Never even heard of that. And natural fabrics which aren't keratin-based like silk. I've heard of like silk moths and silk worms, but I don't think that's the same thing. It's definitely not the same thing. Ugh. Damage to wool is done by the larvae. Yeah, okay, we've got that. So let's take a step back. I think the clothes we use are just resistant to moths now. They don't go for cotton as much as they will for wool, and they definitely won't go for polyester. And I guess when it's a cotton poly blend, they're not touching it. Okay. Will a moth eat a cotton poly blend? Cotton and synthetic fabrics such as polyester and rayon are rarely attacked unless blended with wool. Okay, So that does kind of answer my question. They could, in theory, eat a cotton poly blend, but they're much more likely to go after wool. So basically, it seems like it's not sustainable for them to go after plant based fabrics and synthetic fabrics. Definitely not the synthetic. So I guess nobody wears wool anymore because it's so hot that they're not coming in. Serious infestations of clothes moth can develop undetected in dwellings, causing irreparable harm to vulnerable materials. And I know a lot of carpets nowadays, they're treated with forever chemicals because we don't want stains on our carpets as much. And also, or a lot of clothes are too, I think. I don't know. Don't take my word for that at all. Most things I say you should take with a grain of salt. That's definitely one of them. I know that they do treat carpets a lot with the forever chemicals to try and make them more water resistant, but it seems like they're just not vulnerable materials around anymore. Okay. So now that we know that mothballs aren't necessarily necessary anymore, we can get back to the question at hand. Why do old people still use mothballs? As mentioned above, mothballs are not as popular as they once were. However, they continue to be used in many households for the same reason they were developed, as a repellent to get rid of clothes moths, larvae, moth eggs, and any other insects that will damage stored clothes. Okay, why do old people use mothballs for everything all the time? This is exactly what I'm trying to figure out. I think it's a combination of being taught that this is a normal thing to do and having more types of clothes stockpiled for long periods of time and not wanting moths to eat them. So it seems like, according to r/no stupid questions and Lars, I don't even know how to say your name. I'm so sorry. Lars Illyrian, I think it could be that they are used to having to use mothballs. They are conditioned to having to use mothballs because they used to have more wool fabrics. Therefore, they had to use mothballs and they just never stopped. Now I just have to know, do old people like the smell of mothballs? Partially because their furniture is usually real wood and contributes to smell. Okay, so old people smell is a thing. That's not what I'm worried about. Mothballs is what I'm worried about. Okay, my brain is fried, and we have a conclusion. Old people used to have lots of clothes that were made of wool and natural fabrics. We now have less of those natural fabrics. Those natural fabrics were vulnerable to moths that were eating the organic materials, the keratin found in the fibers. Nowadays, we don't use clothes that have keratin fibers like wool. We use synthetic stuff, polyester. Well, cotton's not synthetic, but we use synthetic stuff like polyester and also cotton, which has a lot less keratin in it. Therefore, the moths are less interested. Nowadays, air conditioning is also more widespread, so we don't need to have our windows open and they can't just get in as easily. Granted, that's not the whole thing because the moths can still get in if they wanted to, but nonetheless, it's much more difficult for them to do so. So old people used to fear moths eating their nice leather, no, nice wool jacket that they would wear in the winter, and then they're like, oh, we gotta have the mothballs to make sure the moths don't eat my clothes, and now they still do it. And they put them outside their houses because they want their whole house to smell. Oh, yeah, I forgot to say this at the beginning of the video, but this is a new thing I'm trying to do where I'm just gonna figure stuff out. So if you want to see more, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, I guess. I'm hoping I get better and more comfortable with this, but we'll see how it goes. This was a trip, but I enjoyed it, I think. Now I'm just frustrated and I still hate the smell of mothballs.